Today, with any luck, we will complete the dragon portion of our dragon door knocker. We may not quite get it all done. The tongue may end up getting done in part of another video, but we'll see. The idea is to do the nose, get a beard on him, split the mouth, prepare for the tongue, split the horns off, and see how much of that we can get done today. If you watched the previous episode, I did yesterday, you'll know we had a few troubles. We managed to break the first set of horns off of him, and we've got a little crack back here that I had to repair, but nothing too serious, nothing we can't persist and get by with. And I think a lot of those issues were really due to just working it a little bit too cold at that point. I've said it before, wrought iron really needs to be worked pretty hot, but as you get the more refined features, if it's too hot, you start to erode those features off by scaling it too much. And it's real easy to burn something like the tip of a horn or a tooth or a tongue or something like that. So you don't have any choice but to work it cold as you start to create the details in the face. But doing the heavy forging, splitting, bending, that kind of stuff, punching, that all needs to be done as hot as you possibly can. So here's what we have so far. There's our dragon. His eyes are done. And like I say, ready to start working on the nose and the mouth. And his tail is done. Now we cut off part of the end of this bar and we made this little piece out of it. And this will be what the tail strikes on when you swing the door knocker. It'll hit that. And that will be set into the back plate as a big rivet. And it'll need to be cleaned up, a little bit more forging, but it's roughed out, so we're in good shape there. When I did that, I cut this little piece off. We may try to forge that into a little short round, and we can use that as the rivet that will then go through this hole to attach to the back plate. To get 2 tabs for that, I'll probably cut the back plate a little shorter. I'll see if I need to draw it out longer before I do that, and make a couple of little pieces that have matching holes. They'll have tenon through the back plate, and we'll cover all that when we get to the assembly part. Now here are the 2 horns that broke off. We're not going to throw that away either. We're going to try and use every bit of the material, or use as much of it as we can to make the project. And I thought about drilling and reinserting the horns, and that would certainly be one way you could achieve this. And you could get some really very nice horns. You could put them just about anywhere at any angle and get exactly the horns you want that way. Kind of make a longhorn cow dragon out of them, or whatever it is you want. Just round these up, drill holes, and that'll be much the way we do the tongue. But I think I'm going to go ahead and split short horns off instead, just to show that technique. And we're going to drill the back of the mouth and insert the tongue. And I'll use one of these horns then to make the tongue. So I'm going to need to round this up, make a tenon essentially that will insert into his mouth, and then forge the tongue out of it. And we'll try to get the tongue forged today, even if we don't get it installed. Let's head over to the forge. Let's get the head hot and start working on the end of his snout. First thing I'm going to do is try to create the beard. And I'm just going to try and peen some beard out here. Just something to start with. I don't want to mark up his nose too badly. I think we're okay there, and that gives us some beard we can work with. I'm going to work on a rounded edge of the anvil so I don't create a sharp spot there. It's getting there, but he's a little off center. This is the point where it would be super easy to burn off little details. So even though I would like to work this hot, I'm going to be somewhat careful not to get it too hot. I think that's looking pretty good. I remember when we wrapped this and forge welded, this was bent full thickness. It didn't get cut in half. There's no end grain here. So I'm actually pulling a grain that comes around this way into this beard. If this was end grain, the odds of splitting and getting all sorts of weird things happening would be much higher. So the folding it like that, I think, is paying off for us. I think we can go back to the vise, set his nose in, and then start working on the mouth. Now, as much as I would like to keep this at a blistering high heat, I'm afraid the beard's liable to burn off if I'm not careful. I also try to keep it up in the upper range of the fire and pointing upwards in the coal fire instead of down. Going to be a little straightening to do on the beard. It's kind of cocked off to one side there. As you can see, nostrils starting to take shape. I'll use one of these set tools to push the beard back over. Beard will cool off the fastest. That's where I'm going to start. I may do that over a couple of successive heats. And I also want to refine some of this nose from where it was clamped in the vise earlier. As I continue to work this, I'm going to have that horn over the edge of the vise block, but I want to make sure I don't drive it down and start to bend it up. I think it'd be really easy to break off. So I'm going to try and always keep it hanging way out here somewhere. I'm going to use this real small ball nose punch and drive in the nostrils deeper. Make sure you don't accidentally poke out the back side. Yeah, it looks better. Take one last little light pass to clean up any odd marks left on his nose here. I also think I'm going to fuller right between his nostrils. Sorry I keep stepping in front of the camera. Now I'm going to a much smaller fuller, and I'll give you a close-up of this. Just kind of give him a little bit of character there. So hopefully you can see what I just did with the fuller. And now his nose is done. Now it's time to create a mouth. I'm going to stand him up on the vise where it's a little easier to see what I'm doing, and just establish a line at this point. Just want to make sure I'm starting right where I want to start. This does cool down fairly quickly, so we need to take lots of heats. Now, I'm making his lower jaw smaller than his upper jaw, because his upper jaw is jaw and nose and sinuses and all that stuff. And I don't think it looks right if you split this right down the center. So get that hot again. You can see what we're doing. And really, I don't need to go any further than that if I don't want to. I think I would like to go a little bit further. I think it'll look better, but I don't think it's absolutely necessary. Just depends on the look you're going for. And I kind of bring the chisel around the side just to give the illusion that it goes a little further than what I'm actually chiseling. But I think that's going to be enough. I'm going to just start with this same little tiny ball punch. It's about an 1/8 inch diameter, and it tapers. I'm going to put a punch way back in the back of his mouth, and this is where the tongue will insert. I'll get it hot again, so I've got plenty of heat to do that. Yep, lost my toothpick. Now in reality, this will get drilled the exact size that I make the tongue once I get the tongue done. That's just a good place to start the drill bit. I'm going to start defining his forehead. Again, I'm going to go to a fuller here. But I'm going to take this and kind of make a Y. Kind of up behind his eyes to create kind of an eyebrow. I'm going to also continue it further back, kind of separate the two sides of his head in preparation for horns. Hope that makes some sense. I'm going to go to a bigger fuller back here. Kind of work it to the sides a little bit. Again, part of what I'm doing here is creating a space that'll be easy to split off into horns. There'll be some more refining of this after the horns are done. So then we'll take a curved chisel and chisel up here and try and lift some horns up without breaking them the next heat. I'm going to have just the tiniest bit of audio difficulty here, so we'll describe what's going on using the curved chisel to start establishing where the horns are going to go. I'm going to do a little on each side and go back and forth, try to keep things even. But this heat's really just about getting a good starting point established. And then I'm going to take it back to the fire, get it hot, and we're going to do a little bit more in this heat. This curved chisel works real well to help get the handle of the chisel up where you can actually work with it a little bit better. This would be real awkward with a straight chisel in the gouge shape.
helps get under the horns and makes it quite easy to raise the horns up. It's a very useful tool for this. It would be real easy to split these off and break them, especially in wrought iron. So you have to work kind of carefully, and again, back and forth to keep it even and keep from distorting everything off to one side. It's real hard to fix if it gets distorted. We're ending up with some nice little horns. They aren't as grand as I put in my original drawing, but I rather like them anyways, and they would be perfectly suitable just like this. But I think I'm going to go ahead and take one more heat and make them just a little bit bigger. It's just really a matter of what you want for your particular style of dragon that you're going to make.
Kind of lever up a little on the chisel. Start standing these up some. I think that's as far as I'm going to go. I'm just trying to even up the depth of cut all the way around. So the next thing I want to do is I want to stand those up just a little bit, maybe straighten them out, and I might just use a pair of pliers for that. But then I need to get into this area. I've just created a big ridge here that I don't really like, and I want to work that back down and blend that in with the back of his head. You can see a lot of potential for these to be either horns or ears. You can call them whatever you like, I guess. I would like to do a little forging on those, but it's going to be really hard to. If I can get it in there or not. Just really afraid we're going to crack these off if I go too far with them. I think I'm just going to use a fuller to kind of stand the backs of the horns up a little bit. And we're just going to let it be a little bit funky. I also want to get rid of any sharp spots that might create cracks. But I really rather like him. I think he's looking very nice. Horns aren't perfectly even. This one almost looks like I may have burned a little off of it. But a little more refining of the lines around his head, and I think we're going to be done with that part, and then we can put some teeth in him. Horns to burn on one side, and beard to burn on the other side. Using a kind of a half round fuller just to work on this transition. And the set tool then to get back in here. I think the rest of that to clean up, I'm going to wait and use files for anything, or just leave it. Let it just be what it's going to be. I think the risk of creating stress cracks, I just can't get it hot enough without burning either the horns or the beard off, so there's just too much going on here. I do have a teeny crack at the base of that horn, so I'm going to just not mess with it anymore. Using the same curved chisel again. I'm going to raise a couple of teeth. I don't think I'm going to do too many teeth on this one. I think 2 top and 2 bottom will be enough. So we're really starting to look very dragon-like. I don't think I'm going to do anything else until after we've got it shaped, for fear of destroying some of the work. So the next thing I need to do is I need to bend it around to give it that forward look when it's a door knocker, and then S-curve this part back. So of course we're looking for it to look sort of like the drawing here. So it's got to bend this way and bend this way, and I want to try not to mess up his face or his head, nor do I want to mess up where I put the hole or take a chance of breaking it. So I want a real controlled heat right in here, and then later from here back. Torch is a good way to get just exactly the heat you want, right where you want it. I think that's what we want for the top bend. He's a little crooked this way, so we'll probably have to straighten that. That's pretty easy to do. I think bending forks are a good way to do this a little bit more gently. I want to get a little bit more bend right in here, so I'm going to have to get some more heat there. And it looks like a bigger bending fork. It's kind of awkward. A lot of this is just trying real hard not to crack the wrought iron again. I think that's probably pretty close. It seems pretty drastic, but by the time this gets bent around, I think we'll be in pretty good shape. I actually think I'm going to have to bend that forward just a little bit more right through here to try and get this in line with the back of that, so it all matches on the back plate. It's got to be kind of level across there. It's really an awkward area to try and bend. I don't know if I can truly bend it or not. So we may end up just bending this out a little bit further to get that to behave properly. Yeah, I think this needs to come up a little bit. Getting pretty close. Of course, I want to have the plane of this and the plane of the tail center line all the same. So there may be a little straightening at the vise. I think we're in pretty good shape here. I don't want to do any massive shaping in the areas that are cold. Just trying to clean up the profile and get everything straight. I don't really want a kinky dragon, or at least not a kinky tail on my dragon. I guess it's okay if he's a little bit weird. Okay, I think that is where I'm going to call this piece done until I am ready to put the tongue in. He's going to need some filing. There's a few little repairs I'd like to make with a torch. There on the edge of his mouth there's just the tiniest crack. It doesn't go very far, but I don't want it to propagate. And then the same thing right here on this horn. So I'm going to weld those up. I need to do a little cleaning up of this hole. I'll probably re-drift that. I may just heat it with a torch, or I may just drill it. Drilling it might be the safest thing. But otherwise, I think we're in pretty good shape for today. Well, here we have a closer look at our dragon. You can see his eyes and the horns, nostrils, beard. You can kind of see the teeth of this image. So I think that's a good place to quit for today. So we're starting to see what this is going to look like. It will go on the back plate like this, and in use it will pick up and knock. So right away I see I've got a little bit of a problem right here. There's a little lump that's going to keep it from pivoting, so I may have to try and drift and stretch this out just a little, which makes me a little nervous because we already know it wants to split. But something's going to happen, or it's going to have to stand off a little further, and that's a possibility too, is to bring it clear out here, and then it can rock all it needs to. Sounds pretty good there. Bet it doesn't sound like that on a door though. Really, something like this is more ornamental than it is functional. Yes, you can tap on the door with it, but that's really not what it's for. So today's project, or portion of the project, was not completely without problems. Like I said, I've got a few little tiny cracks that could turn into problems later, so I'm going to go ahead and try and take the torch and weld those up. They're in places that should never receive any stress. At this point, none of this should be abused. But just to be sure, I think I'll go ahead and put a few torch welds in. I had a little crack back here, which is why there's a lump here, is because I went ahead and fixed that with a torch before I finished bending it. I didn't see any reason to show the repairs. If you're a welder and you know how to weld, you can do that. If you don't have the stuff to weld, you're just out of luck when that happens, because there's really no way to reforge weld any of this back together when it breaks cross grain. At least no way that I can think of. It just seems like that would be the project lost at that point. And since I don't want to lose this, I'm really starting to be very happy with the way it's coming out. I'm going to go ahead and go with that little bit of a modern touch to make the repair. Wish I didn't have to. Wish I was a little bit more experienced at working wrought iron and that I could avoid those. And maybe when we do this again in a year or two, I will have more experience with wrought iron, and that won't happen. In mild steel, everything that has haunted me on the wrought iron, I think I would have gotten away with. And that's why I have had the problems, because I'm so used to working with mild steel, and in some ways it is more forgiving. The wrought iron does work a lot easier. It cuts easier, it punches easier, it forges easier. It doesn't have the carbon, so it's a lot easier to move. But then it also has the problems that it wants to break. And all of the problems we've had are not with the grain, which surprises me. I figured that would be where things would break and split, but it's all cross-grain splits. It's all little stress fractures. So that's just an observation, and I think we can do something about that. I think we can avoid that. It just takes more practice with the material, a little bit more experience, and that just takes time. I don't know if I'll work that much wrought iron. In the last 30 years, I've worked very little wrought iron, probably less than 20 pounds of it total, compared to thousands of pounds of mild steel. So wrought iron's just not really my thing, but this has been a fun project. At least 2 more videos. We need to make the tongue and put the tongue in the Dragon. I'll probably clean this hole up off camera because it's mostly going to be a matter of running a drill bit through there. And then we need to prepare the back plate and the little tabs, and that'll probably all be part of the next video. Then we'll assemble it as a final video. And hopefully these videos are getting a little shorter each time so people don't get tired of watching them. Typically when we go past 2 videos, people quit watching by the 3rd and the 4th video because they've already seen most of what they want, which was probably what we did today. But hopefully you'll stick around, see the finished product. I think it's going to be worth it. I think it's going to be cool. Well, I hope that was interesting. I hope you're learning something right along with me. I hope you're enjoying the videos and can give them a thumbs up. If you haven't hit that subscribe button, this is a good time to go ahead and do that so you don't miss anything else. If you would like to support the channel financially and help fund the work that goes into making these videos, there is a link down in the description for PayPal and for Patreon, and you can donate that way. But there's no obligation, no expectation. The videos are free. I plan to keep the videos free, so you don't have to do that unless you just really feel like it. In the meantime, do try to get out to your shop. Maybe you can make a dragon. But do stay safe and do wear your safety glasses, and we'll see you for the next one.